Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. All right, we're starting another ROI webinar after coming back from our summer break. We've got folks entering the room. Welcome, good to see you. Hello, Caroline, Fred, Hat, Matt, Trent, wonderful, great. Well, we're coming in from all over the world, it appears. Once again, my name is Brandt Handley. I'm the founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI, and we do retained executive search exclusively for the middle market. We've taken the summer off, had an opportunity to get a little R&R. I hope that you all have as well. Our last webinar was in June. But we are back in full force and have planned many, many exciting new webinars over the next several months, taking us through the fall season. So we're welcome to have you back again. We'll get started in a few minutes with our presenter today, but wanted to give a chance to have other people come in the room. But it's also important to share that we've been busy over the summer, and I wanted to share with all of you, for those of you that don't know, our CEO podcast series. You should be able to see our iTunes page. We launched this back in mid-June, ROI's Into the Corner Office podcast, with powerhouse middle market CEOs telling their story of getting into the corner office. We've released, let's see, almost 30 so far, including our introduction. All of these CEOs have a very, very unique story as it pertains to how they've developed their journey, so to speak. This was born out of the motivation that so many middle market executives come to me all the time and say, Brandt, I want to be a CEO one day. And, I'd tell them the usual stuff about it's not so much the companies they work for, even the schools they attend. It's about grit. It's about having as many failures as losses, usually a few more than that. It's about, raising your hand in a corporate environment when others aren't there. And then it struck me when someone suggested I do podcasts that why not get the real thing to tell the story instead of repeating all my old adages. So that's the premise. You can find Into the Corner Office on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. We're about on 15 different global podcasts, and please get a chance to listen to them. We've got 2 coming out every week. We've had a tremendous response. We've got over 50 podcasts now recorded, and it looks like I'm recording 2 more this week. So we're actually launching or recording now for almost 2019. So we've got a little bit out ahead of it, but some wonderful companies here, BPI Sports with Jennifer Huey. We've got Susan Linton-Smith, the CEO of Quiznos. Susan Cameron was the CEO of Reynolds American, and some wonderful people from all various different walks of life, and they're wonderful stories. So please get a chance to listen to those and rate us on iTunes if you like. So wonderful that you get a chance to listen to those. So today we've got more people coming in the room. Welcome, Mark. Good to see you, Peter. Peter, in fact, was one of our CEO guests, and his podcast will be coming out soon. So glad to have you with us here. But today we're focusing on developing a great sales organization. And I'm very, very excited to welcome Jorge Chavez. We'll have George come on in a couple of minutes. And you're right, his name is spelled Jorge. And for those of you that speak Spanish, he does go by George, but he spells it the Spanish way. So I am not mispronouncing it, but he can tell you a little story about that. George is the founder and president of Topaz Sales Consulting. And we met through an organization called C12, which is a marketplace of Christian CEOs across the country. And we've gotten an opportunity to talk several times over various webinars. And my group leader has had an opportunity to work very closely with George and has sung his praises. And I said, wow, this will be a great opportunity to bring George into our webinar series. He and his team have a passion for equipping CEOs and their sales leadership professionals to hire, train, motivate, and grow high-performance sales teams. And he really understands the challenges of both large enterprises as well as those of us in the middle market. So he's a real transparent guy. He's got some wonderful ways to think about how to motivate and develop sales. And it's just super, super exciting to have him here today. So with that being said, George, it looks like we've got a quorum here. New folks coming in all the time, and they'll join us as we roll. So would appreciate now, George, if you can join us face-to-face and welcome you into the room. There he is. Hello, George.
Well, thank you very much. Great to be here. And it is, to your point, yeah, pronounced George, spelled Jorge. So my dad is from Peru, Lima, Peru, and I was a junior, and that's just how they spelled it. But I grew up in Upper Michigan, and back in the 70s, people just didn't know a lot of Spanish up in Upper Michigan. So I grew up with George.
That's great.
It sucked, but I get called Jorge all the time. So.
Well, welcome. We're very excited to have you here. And just for those of you that are coming in or else new to the webinar series, we're going to do a Q&A approach as we go through this. So we've got a few questions that have come from people that have sent me those questions prior to the webinar. If you look in your chat box, please let us know that you can hear us and see us okay, but that's a place where you can ask questions as well. And my process is going to be providing those questions to George as and when they come in to the organization, or rather to the webinar, and he'll address those as we go. So please send us your questions. He wants this to be a very interactive webinar, and please do stay to the end. He's got an interesting offer for those of you that maybe like to hear a little bit more about what he says, and we'll get to that at the end of our presentation. So with that being said, George, I will be here, but I'll go mute and take the video off and have you take over from here. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Well, very good. Well, I just appreciate everybody taking this time over the lunch hour to join us on this webinar. So I'm the founder and president of Topaz Sales Consulting, and we sit between the CEO of a company and the sales organization. We provide all of the tools to hire and develop salespeople in the sales leadership, and to equip sales managers to more effectively manage their salespeople. Equally, we spend a lot of time mentoring CEOs on what to expect from the sales organization, what's good and what are some things they should be concerned about. I've been doing this for 28 years, the last 18 as a business owner, and the last 8 I've been coaching CEOs and working with sales organizations as a consultant. And so I'm super honored to be here. I typically have a very interactive time with people, so it'll be a little challenging for me to not just ask you questions and make it interactive. So I'll do my best to share some things. I got a couple slides to talk about, but you made time in your day for me, and I want to talk about the things you want to talk about. So please do share some questions. And Brandt, I've asked him to interrupt me as often as he wants to, so I can talk about the things you want to talk about. And so, but to get started, I just want to share the purpose in the message that I want to share today is, so this topic, why aren't your salespeople closing more sales? It's not like I have just one presentation that addresses this. It's a great title to get people to attend an event, because out in the marketplace, this is what they're thinking. Why aren't my sales people closing more sales? Or if you're here for yourself, you're thinking, why am I not closing more sales? And that's really where people start to search for answers. And so that's where I chose the title. And the second piece to that is it because they're having conversations in their head that they'll never tell you? There's a lot of books written that share with people on how to close more sales. They'll tell you what to say and how to say it. And I don't see a lot on what to believe, what to think. And there's a lot of beliefs that people have in sales that prevent them from having greater success. A lot of times people will come up and ask me, how do I overcome this objection? Or how do I overcome this other objection? And they're looking for a silver bullet. And I would share with you, there is no silver bullet to being great in sales, but it starts with our belief system. And like anything, what you believe affects what you say and how you say it and how you listen. And so I wanted to today talk about a limiting sales belief system and compare it to a more empowered sales belief system, recognizing that what you believe will affect every single sales conversation you have, from your first hello to how you end the meeting to how you follow up with someone. Okay, so I wanted to just equip you with that information, and when I pull up the slides, I'll ask you if you have any that you want to discuss deeper, then let Brandt know and he'll let me know. Let's start with this. What does it mean to develop an empowered mindset or belief system? It goes back to when you are planning your conversation or your meeting with a prospect or a client. The conversation you have with yourself is more important than the conversation you're going to have with your prospect. If you believe or are concerned about competition, or if you're concerned about your price, or if you are concerned about the fact that you're not meeting with a decision maker, that will affect your conversation and how you approach your questions or what you share or how you listen. A limiting belief system are beliefs that you have that actually make you less effective in a sales conversation with a prospect or a client. Conversely, an empowered belief system, those beliefs actually make you more effective in a sales conversation with a prospect. Okay, so the more empowering beliefs you have, the better results you'll get. And top performers have a very strong belief system as it relates to sales. And because of that, it enables them to have consistent, predictable results. Salespeople that carry limiting beliefs and are not addressing those and changing those, but actually believe those limiting beliefs, they actually think they're helping them, those folks continue to flounder and struggle, and they get unpredictable results, and they may not know why until they attend a webinar like this. So let me share with you what some self-limiting beliefs look like. And I'm just pulling up some on the slide, and truly, Brandt, if anyone has questions on here or any that they would like to discuss more deeply, I could spend an hour on any one of these bullets. But essentially, these 5 items on the slide represent beliefs that if you align with those, if you believe those, that they actually make you less effective in selling, okay? So let me just walk through these at a high level. And if you disagree, I would love to hear that, and I can expound a little bit more on it. But I'll walk through them at a high level. Prospects who like me will eventually buy from me. Most of us are taught that it's important to be liked. It's important to get along with people. We're taught to not rock the boat, be nice. And when we do that, it's great in the regular world to be liked. But when we bring that mindset into sales about we want to be liked by our prospects, what happens is we do things that make us likable. And unfortunately, some of those things don't help us become more effective in sales. When we want to be liked, we tend to struggle asking tough questions. We struggle to confront a prospect. In fact, we might think that that's not a good use of time. And people that want to be liked tell people what they want to hear. And if you think about it, think about anybody who's in sales that you really, really like, and ask, is there anyone that you know in sales that you like but you would never buy from? And you probably could come up with a few. And if I asked you why, the response I would hear is, well, because they're not really good at their job, or I don't trust them. They're not that competent. And you're really starting to uncover from whom people buy. People don't buy from people they like. They buy from people they trust and respect. Now, I'm not saying you have a free rein to go be a jerk. It's certainly helpful to be likable, but That's not why people buy. People buy from people they trust, and people who are trusted tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. If someone's budget is 50% of what your cost would be, they would let them know that their budget is, and the money they want to spend is not sufficient to pay for the services. Do they have the ability to come up with the other half? They need to hear that because they don't have enough resources. So it's a limiting belief. If we believe people who like me will eventually buy from me, it's limiting because we'll go around being liked, and unfortunately, we'll struggle with the tough questions. And at the end of the day, people buy from people they trust. And so that's a limiting belief. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And if you have questions, let me know.
George, yeah, we do have one question.
Okay.
Peter has asked, he'd like you to expand on that last point with some examples,
Okay.
so that you can maybe get into that a little bit.
Yeah, if they're happy with their current provider, I cannot help them, that last point?
Correct.
Excellent. Okay. So if we believe this, if I believe that when I talk with prospects and I ask some questions about who they might be using today to provide the service that I provide, for instance, and they tell me that they are using XYZ company, and they're very happy. They really like them. They've been a really good resource for them. At the moment I hear they're happy with their current provider, if I believe that if they're happy with their current provider, I can't help them, I'll get stuck. I'll be ready to end the call. I'll be, well, hey, congratulations, that's really great. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, I come by every once a month, or I can reach out to you in a quarter, see if anything's changed, or hey, if anything happens or changes, here's my contact information, or here's a brochure. Reach out to me and let me know. And that's where it ends, right? Because if they're happy with their current provider, that's really the end of the conversation. I can't help them. So that's where it's a limiting belief. In reality, a lot of people say they're happy with their current providers, and there's a lot of reasons they may say it. It could be true. It could be they don't trust you. It could be they don't want to hear your sales pitch. When someone says they're happy, it's important to continue that conversation and learn more about who they're using and why they're using them and what they might like about them as a provider. You could go even further, though, to see if you can uncover some problems or any kind of pain by asking, if they could do just one thing even better, what might that be? And that mindset is, and I have to go with another thought here, it's a limiting belief, the one above it, prospects are honest. If we believe prospects are honest, then we're going to believe everything they say at face value. That's a limiting belief. We're buyers, and we are not always forthright about everything we're thinking when we're buying something. In fact, I'm not saying we lie, but we certainly don't say everything. And so believing prospects are honest, if they say that they're happy with their current provider, we'll just believe them and go on. The reality is prospects aren't always honest, and we want to approach every conversation with healthy skepticism. And so if they say they're happy with their current provider, we want to challenge that and ask and learn more, recognizing that it might be true, but it might not. And I would try to dig a little bit deeper to validate or verify that they're telling me the truth. And it's very possible that there are some areas that their current provider is falling short, which might be an opportunity or opening for you. Okay.
A follow-on question with that was maybe some examples. Can you perhaps cite some examples from some of your consulting work, George, where you've had that type of situation, just to kind of make it a little more real for us?
For sure. Yeah. So, well, let me think about this. A current example of happy with their current provider. Let me think about this.
Because I get this all the time. So I'm particularly, Peter and I are particularly interested in this one.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. So I'm trying to think of this happens generally when you're cold calling or you're prospecting. Because if you're getting call-ins, they probably want something and you're having a reason for a conversation. if you're out doing prospecting, you run into this all the time. So it happens when you're out cold calling, prospecting, creative selling. Everybody has different names for it, but it's essentially calling on people that aren't expecting you. Okay, so I have clients in every industry, from pest control services to folks that inspect oil rigs out in the ocean to make sure that they're functioning properly, to financial services. And a lot of times people have current providers. So if you're calling them and they're not expecting your call, and you introduce yourself and let them know a little bit more about what you do, and then they volunteer or you discover that they're happy with their current provider. It happens all the time in all of these conversations. So it's not any industry specific, but it's usually when you're outbound prospecting. And the thing to do when you run into that is, as I mentioned, is just dig deeper. So if they're using and I'm going to use an example around pest control services. Okay, if they use a competitor and they're happy, if you're on site in an example like that, you're on site and you're looking around their premises, you might spot an opportunity or an issue that if they had the service you provide, there's a concern there. There's a problem that they might be encountering. And so you may bring that up to their attention. And if you knock on their door and you have a conversation, let's say it's a commercial warehouse, and they distribute food. So it's a food distributor and it's a warehouse, and so they have a lot of food. And let's say they have rodents or rats or something like that come to their facility and eat their packaged goods. And so you go and knock on their door and you talk to the person in charge, and you ask if they have a current pest control provider, and they may say yes, and they say they're very happy. Well, you could ask a few questions, but you may spot that there's bait stations that are unkept. There may be some packaged goods that you see that have been contaminated, and so you would start digging a little bit deeper, maybe even point out some of these concerns to get past that issue that they might have. The key point on this is that we don't just bail when they tell us they're using someone or if they tell us that they're happy. We have to dig deeper. We have to challenge what they say. We have to ask a few more questions. And if you can do visual inspection, or you have some other intelligence that could counter a happy client, then I would use that information gently, of course, to try to open up a door and get into a dialogue where they'll be more open and honest with you. Does that sound?
Yeah. So in summary, it's get more information, right? And attempt to try to have a further conversation that may challenge their belief system. Is that
completely?
Yeah.
Let me leave one more point. If you go future focused, right? Maybe the provider they have today is meeting their needs today. What you want to have in your conversations is more strategic conversations. So you're not in the weeds, you're not in the transaction, you're not in the building your proposal, but you're learning where the company is, where they want to be, what their growth goals are, what some of the challenges that they anticipate. And you could ask how their current provider is going to help them with some of those upcoming challenges, their growth goals, whatever they might be. So maybe their current provider is sufficient today, but will they be sufficient as they continue to grow or move forward? And so that could open up some doors as well. From a limiting belief perspective, if you just believe if they're happy, then you can't help them. It'll be the end. So you're absolutely right, Brandt. Just keep digging for more information. Okay.
Super. Got another question here before we leave this slide. This is from Mark. Thank you, Mark. His comment and question was, this also occurs with regular customers that you're trying to expand share with, right? Trying to grow the business within. You know, questions around supply chain, AR, and what they like and dislike about their own customer experience typically expand the conversation. I think that's a very good point, right? You know, if you can try to get more information, maybe even outside the area of, you know, your service offerings, are going to uncover, you know, new opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back to prospects are honest. We need to have healthy skepticism if they're happy with their current provider. Even as you move, if you're farming, right, you have a larger strategic account, you have one division, you want to grow into another division, you're running into some resistance because they use a competitor. Certainly there's a lot of strategies on how to get in there, but if they're happy with their current provider, it's the same thing. Bring some healthy skepticism, learn a little bit more about that company, ask some questions if you know that competitor, things that you know they may or may not be able to provide, to uncover some opening, if you will, where they start to open up and share with you some of their plans, and it turns into an open, honest conversation. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay. Before I leave this slide, I just want to comment on this third bullet. When a prospect asks a good question, I need to provide a thorough answer. So we use this tool. It's a sales evaluation. So if you're an existing employee, it evaluates your strengths, your weaknesses, your skills, your blind spots, and things like that. And there's been over 1.7 million of these assessments performed. I've looked at several thousand of them. And I will tell you, 90% of people that have taken it, it says I must educate my prospect. They believe that. And so answering this question, when a prospect asks a good question, 90% of you believe that you need to provide a thorough answer. And you might even ask yourself, why would that be a limiting belief? Isn't that your job to educate your prospect? The answer is yes, probably, but it really depends on, you really have to ask yourself, when is the right time to educate? The right time to educate and provide answers is after you have a qualified prospect. And the only way to qualify a prospect is asking questions. So if you're in the beginning stages of your sales process and you're trying to qualify this person to see if there is a good mutual fit, when they ask you a good question, which many times they'll ask you up front or early in your conversation, and even if you know the answer, there's a probability you could be making an assumption. But the question, it's not about answering the question. The real value in your conversation at that point is uncovering why they're asking you the question. It's the story behind the story. That's where all the gold is. So someone says, how much do you cost? Tell me about your client list. Tell me more about this solution. It's good to ask and uncover why they're asking. If they want to know about your services or your solutions or your clients, you may ask, I'd love to tell you more about it. Can I ask, what do you already know about our services? Or what do you know about our clients? Or what do you know about our pricing? Or just dig deeper before answering that question. And that's why that's a limiting belief. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, great, terrific.
Excellent. Okay, any more on here? Because I'll go to the next slide.
Let's keep moving. Sounds great.
Keep moving. All right. So conversely, limiting beliefs make you less effective as a sales professional. Empowering beliefs make you more effective. They help you build trust, learn the truth, and not waste time more effectively than your competition. And so and I have two slides on here, this one and another, of some empowering beliefs. Okay. And I don't know if anyone responded quickly. I'd be happy to comment on any or all of them. But any questions or comments of any that someone would like to dig in deeper?
Not yet, but
okay.
We're surveying, we're polling.
Got it. Okay. So the first one is actually quite controversial for a lot of people, and that is that no is a wonderful answer. You may not believe this at this moment, but absolutely no is your best friend. So you might ask, why would no be a wonderful answer in sales? There's books written that say how to get to a yes, overcome objections, right? Things like that. So why would no be a wonderful answer? It actually goes down to the second bullet. My intent is more important than my pitch or technique. Or the fourth bullet. The third bullet, time equals money. The fourth bullet, my goal is to see if it makes sense to continue to invest my time. We all have 24 hours in a day. So why are some people more successful in business and sales than others? It's how they choose to use their time. Salespeople waste so much time on unqualified prospects. They waste time. They're horrific at asking questions because they want to be liked. They don't ask the tough questions. They spend time with unqualified prospects trying to please them, sending proposals and then revisions to the proposals. And then because they're ineffective at securing commitments to next steps, they're chasing them and trying to get follow-up meetings and get back on the calendar when people go dark. And all of those things are a waste of time. If we would be more effective at getting people to tell us no in the sales call, in the conversation, we would save a lot of time. And if we would give prospects permission to tell us no, that if we're not a fit, that's completely okay, we would get a lot more truth in our meetings. 2/3 of the population do not want to tell you no. They like people, they care about your feelings, and they're going to do everything they can to not disappoint you. And that will sound like, send me a proposal, call me next week, can you leave your information? Things like that, when in fact, they just don't want to tell you no. So no is a wonderful answer because no helps us get truth from customers, and it also helps us save a lot of time, right? So what we really want to do in our meetings, in our prospect meetings, isn't get yeses. We want to try to find reasons that make sense to stop the conversation, right? We want to find reasons that we're not a good mutual fit. And so we spend our time, top performing salespeople spend their time trying to get no's. They're looking for obstacles. They're looking for objections. They're looking for issues. That's where they go. If they uncover an issue that they can't overcome or it doesn't make sense, then they politely part ways and they don't waste their time. If they can't uncover any issues, they may run into some obstacles, but if they overcome each one, then they continue to invest their time and continue the conversation. But if they do uncover one that is a real obstacle, then they just agree that maybe right now it doesn't make sense. A no today doesn't mean no forever. Tomorrow is a whole nother day. Lots of things can happen. So that's why no is a wonderful answer. We look for those obstacles. They save us time, and we also let people know that no is an appropriate response so that we can have more open, honest conversations talking about the truth than the lies and manipulations that typically occur with traditional selling. Okay.
George, I've got a great, this is so key, and I'm a firm believer in this. So I've got a question on my business. So I'm gonna hog the floor here, but we got some other ones coming in.
Okay.
As I think you know, I've got two brands. We've got ROI Middle Market Executive Search, which sponsors this webinar. We've had, a very good run. It's been a wonderful 8-9 years. And about a year ago, got into a joint venture in the renewable space with offices based in Europe and a partner that's there. And, we're in the process of getting that business up and running. We've had a couple of search assignments. We're obviously, still in that business development phase. And we've had not one, but 2 instances where I can't get a no. And it's very interesting. We engage with these folks and their CEOs, right? So these are running their companies. One is with regards to research for landscape reports that we're doing for the industry. And of course, in the course of that discussion, we ask about their search needs. And the guy sent us an NDA and said, I need a CFO. And we signed the NDA, got that back to him. And then he has gone radio silent. Yeah. And in another discussion with a similar CEO, we kind of asked the question, because people only really hire search executives when they've got hard to find positions, right? If they can get somebody that refers them or somebody in the organization, that's where they're going to go. And we know this, right? So, we always ask the question, is there a hard to find search, within your organization? And he came back and said, yeah, we've got this plant in Jackson, Mississippi, where we make these solar panels. And, there's a software engineer that we really have a hard time filling, sent us the job description. And we didn't come back with a full proposal because I didn't want to be too aggressive, but, gave him some idea, did some research, told him that we could handle this, demonstrated an understanding, and now we can't get him to call us back. So again, totally dark. We've probably had 7 to 10 contacts with both following that initial action on their part. And I just don't understand it. We've called them, we've emailed them, my partner's done it, I've done it. And, what do you do when you can't get the no, right? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, so I suspect many of you, myself included, have run into that in our career, and maybe many are running into that situation right now. And so often the conversation, when you run into a point where someone goes dark, there's a lot of factors that could cause that. And you really, in fact, closing really is affected by everything that happens through the entire process. Okay. So let me give you an example in what I think may have occurred. What the belief system is this, and it goes back to my goal is to see if it makes sense to continue to invest my time. And the thought there is, if somebody wants you to help them, as much as we want, if somebody says, you know what, you're not a fit, Brandt, I checked out your website, I looked at some of your testimonials, and I think for what I'm looking for, it's so unique, I don't really think you're a fit, so I'm not going to, I choose not to work with you at this time.
And I love those conversations, George. I love those conversations because it allows us to both move on, right, without further frustration.
Possibly, but here's where I'm going. I'm with you. So we have to set up our conversations. In fact, we need to set up 100% of all of our conversations to go that way, meaning they're being honest with you and they're telling you the truth. Bring it to say, this is great. This is success in sales, because George just told me success in sales isn't how many yeses I got or how much money I made. Success in sales is with me and tell me the truth 100% of the time. And I know that if I do that every single day, I'm not going to waste time and I'm going to sell more than I ever thought possible. So when you hear that, that's success in sales. The revenue is a byproduct of that type of work. We focus on the things we can control, and that is relationships where people can be open and honest with us. So now, but here's the thing I'm going to say on that. So if they said that to you, Brandt, like that, I would need to be convinced they just told me made sense. So I wouldn't just lay down. Just because I love no doesn't mean that I'm going to just say, oh, okay, so you checked out my site, you checked out this, because they may still have some misinformation.
No,
I would still ask a few more questions, right? But the same thing, the guy who sends you an NDA to do an executive search, in your qualifying, I would ask, if they say, I really want to use you, I think you can help me, I would dig deeper if you haven't gotten the answer to get convinced, why are they going to work with you? And are they working with anyone else? And I would have to know that they've already tried to do it on their own, and doing it on their own doesn't make sense. They're not talking to a competitor, and why they think that I can help them. And then I would also ask some questions around the kind of help they think that they're looking for, and what their expectations are of me as a provider, and what success would look like. And I would only move forward if I was convinced that I believed them and there was a good mutual fit.
Right. And you're absolutely right. And I've certainly followed that process, or tried to. But yeah. when you have a client that takes that first step and says, in my business, here's a job description, we're having trouble filling it, or here's an NDA before I can tell you more. To me, that's a step towards me, right? So my expectation is, hey, we're going to continue this conversation. We respond with, sure, we can help you. Let's schedule another meeting or a time where, here's our proposal, and then you get nothing, right? Yeah. And you keep going back. As I said, it messes with my mind.
Yeah. So here's, there's two things. and hopefully I don't forget the first one because I'm going to comment on the second one, but I want to point out on both. So the second point I want to make is we do listen with happy ears, and we do get excited when we see what we think are buy signals where they say, hey, I can't fill this role. It's been a while and I'm really struggling, and I want to get your help. Can you sign this NDA and tell me how much it costs? We get excited. We think we got a hot one on the line, and we go there. We start to, yeah, send me your NDA and I'll put a proposal together. What we want to do is have healthy skepticism. And here's what that means. Buyers are liars, right? That's empowering self-talk as opposed to prospects are honest. And I would remain curious. You didn't uncover, and I'm being specific on this one with the limited information you shared. So you may have uncovered this, but you want to keep digging for more pain, because pain is personal, it's negative, it's emotional. And the more pain someone has, the quicker they're going to buy. That's their sell cycle, their buy cycle. So we want to, as sales professionals, before giving answers, uncover as much pain as we can so we are confident this is a high priority. It's on their short list that they're going to allocate time, money, and resources. So in order to do that, I may ask a few more questions around, so you've been really struggling to fill this position. What have you done to fill the position? And how did that work for you? And what else have you done? And how did that work for you? And how much is it costing you to not have this position filled? And if you did have, right, so now we're quantifying the cost of a no decision, because our biggest competitor is not our competitor, it's the status quo, right? It's just, they're gonna just keep going down the path they are unless they meet a professional salesperson who can dig deeper, not trying to be liked, but someone who wants to be trusted and respected, who's gonna ask tough questions to get them to the heart of the issue and truly quantify if they're ready to do something, and not leaving that until we're convinced and believe that they're going to do something. And I would go there before satisfying. And so that's the point. That's a really key point.
Yeah,
right?
Thanks, George. And I won't belabor this one, but I think what you've given me, and I think others have taken this away, ask better questions while you're still engaged, and ensuring that those answers are covered, because that's going to hopefully create less frustration as you move forward.
Oh, completely. And thanks for that. I didn't forget my first point. So that's the second point I'd make, is to keep asking questions. Here's the first one I want to make, that salespeople run into this. I train so many sales professionals, and one of the things they learn as I watch them learn and develop, and oftentimes I spend more time helping them break bad habits so they can start forming good habits. And we're creatures of habit, right? And so, but the more committed to success you are, the more quickly you'll change your behaviors. And they go into these meetings after a session like this, they're all pumped up, they got their questions ready, they're all ready to ask questions and listen and challenge. And then boom, they get hit with a question. And they go right to, I know the answer, I think I need to answer their question. They tell the answer, and then they start vomiting their wisdom for 5 minutes, and they learn nothing. So they go in with good intentions, and then they get off track as soon as a good question is asked. And so I encourage you, one of the skills you want to develop is how to get back on track when they ask a good question. If any of you play golf, even the top golfers don't hit it in the fairway 100% of the time. We have to, and that's what, when we screw up and start telling and realize, oh my gosh, I got to get back on track and get back to asking questions. That's like a golfer having to chip back onto the fairway. We have to learn to maintain control of the conversation and not get off track. Go in asking questions, and if we get off track, they catch us off guard or something happens, work your way back to get back on track, because you really, in that discovery time, want to be doing 20% of the talking and them 80%. And when you're talking, you're asking questions. And when they're talking, they're providing you information, both learning. And that's a big, that's the first point is we have good intentions. Have a plan to get back on track if you somehow get off track by starting to talk and tell. Okay.
Awesome. Well, let's get you back on track, because I know we've got about 15 minutes left. And as you said, we would be challenged on getting through this, but this is great stuff, George.
Yeah. Well, so this one, a big one here is about time. This other last bullet I just want to comment on, and I believe this, and I haven't even met you, but since you've made time to be on this call, I'm going to make this bold statement. You are great, personally, because most salespeople never get on this call. So you're in a unique class because you're improving your abilities by just listening and learning, taking some, hopefully gleaning some things here that can help you. You're great. Your company is great, but you are absolutely not a fit for everyone. And that goes back to no is a wonderful answer. Most salespeople, as soon as they hear an objection or obstacle, they come right back at it and try to overcome it instead of asking questions. And most salespeople believe that, hey, I'm going to leave with a sale, and if I don't get this, I'm going to get this. And they just keep digging, and it's very irritating for a buyer. It's much more empowering to know it's okay. You're not a fit for everyone. If someone wants something for free, you're not for them, right? So be prepared and recognize you're not for everyone, and no is okay. No for now isn't no forever. And that will absolutely take tons of pressure off you when selling, okay? So that's why it's empowering. Let me share with you these last couple. And this first bullet corresponds to the one I talked about earlier. When prospects ask a good question, learn why. This second bullet is massive. People buy for their reasons, not yours. So often we sell to people the way we think we want to be sold to. If you like data, if you like options, if you like information, then you're going to tend to give that to others. There's a lot of buyers that don't want all that data and information. So we have to recognize in our discovery why people buy. Don't tell them why they should buy. Find out from them why they will buy and how they buy. And recognize they buy for their reasons, not yours. And so check your buy cycle and your buying habits at the door, and spend all your time discovering from them why they should buy and how they should buy. And that's the most important thing. And know that the way they buy is probably very dissimilar than yours. Okay. This last bullet, my most valuable asset is demonstrating infinite curiosity and sincere interest. One of the things that I share with people is that you should be having high valued conversation. No pressure, low pressure, high valued conversations. And most of you believe, not most, many, that if prospects just knew what I know, they would buy from me. And with that belief system, you just can't wait. And most companies train their salespeople to answer questions and know their value proposition and overcome objections, right? They're just telling machines. And they believe if you knew what I know, so they come in believing their greatest asset is the service that they can provide and the value they think they can provide, and they can't wait to tell about it. That actually is not your greatest value. Your greatest value done properly is your ability to discover the truth. It's having infinite curiosity, which means that you have questions to learn about where the prospect is, where they want to be, what their plan is to get there, looking for gaps and challenges, uncovering pain. Sincere interest is listening. It's being present, not distracted by something else, not thinking about what you're going to say next, but absolutely hanging on every word they say, sincerely interested, and putting yourself in their shoes, seeing it from their perspective, and from there will come all your questions. And buyers who leave a conversation with somebody who brought sincere interest and infinite curiosity left that meeting saying, wow, I learned a lot today. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what I need. I learned a lot about you. And in fact, you probably didn't tell me a lot, but you sure helped me formulate what it is I'm really doing, where I'm stuck and where I need help. And you help me prioritize what this amongst all my other problems. And that is your greatest value. And people buy from people who can do that. And certainly you need to know products and competition and market, but that comes after you qualify someone. This is how you build trust with people. And this is how people, they don't go dark when you do this. And they make time for you. They don't miss appointments. And so your most valuable asset is demonstrating this infinite curiosity and sincere interest. And it is a skill. Okay. So
it's almost biblical, isn't it? Fast to listen, slow to speak.
Oh, it is. In fact, in the Bible, it talks so much about truth. And we don't want yeses. We want the truth. We can, and let's quote a few good men, we can handle the truth. They say you can't. We can handle the truth. We can deal with the truth. We can't deal with lies. We can't do anything with lies. They're lies, right? So we want to be on the side of the truth, and we want honesty. And the salesperson who can bring that into this conversation is going to win the business. If you have an offering that fits. But you will absolutely be the person that the customer wants to do business with, because all your competition is just telling, educating, overcome objections, putting pressure on them, going for the yes. When you're seeking the truth, building trust, not wanting to waste your time or theirs, you are a breath of fresh air. It's highly differentiated. And when you approach your business and sales conversations this way, money falls out of the equation. It's not going to be a negotiation. They're going to hope they can afford you, and they'll pay what you charge, and they're going to hope that you can solve their problem. That's typically what's going through their mind while you're having this conversation, as opposed to how do I get this guy out of my office, and they lie just to appease you, and so you'll go away. And that's what they do to your competition.
Awesome,
okay?
George. George, we've got a few questions that have come in prior to the webinar. They're not on your topic, so I don't want to interrupt your flow, but we do have about 10 minutes left. Did you have another slide? Should we jump to those questions?
Here's all I would say is I'm going to wrap this up and I'll go to those questions. To learn and not do is to not learn. So if you guys heard something that was of value and you think it could help you, but you go back to your calls and do exactly what you were doing before, you didn't learn anything. You just wasted your time. And so I encourage you to identify something that you're believing that or heard doing, stop doing it, and replace it with something more effective that you'll start doing. Write it down, make a commitment to do it, and watch change happen, positive change happen. So I'll wrap up with that, and I do have an offer right at the end that I'll share, but let's go to your questions.
Awesome, George. Thank you. Wow, this has just been terrific. Really wonderful stuff. It's got me thinking so much about my business. We just do have a couple of questions here. This one, I think, is with regards to kind of leads, and we talked on this a little bit. So if there's any more to ask, when a lead turns cold, what are some good strategies to warm up the lead and reactivate the sales process? And let's assume, for example, that maybe we didn't have all your great questions beforehand, but we're wanting to try to get things going again.
Yeah, for sure. So just on that, let me highlight one point. This is hugely important. Never, ever end a meeting without a commitment to a next step. Okay, that will take care of this problem. And a commitment to a next step is a phone call in a day or a week or a month or maybe a stop by in a quarter, or maybe we should never talk again. Agree to a next step, because then if you agree, they say, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. You facilitate, you say, hey, what would you like to do now? Even if it didn't make sense and you're not going to work together, they might ask you, call me back in a quarter. Okay. And then you do what they said. So when you call them back, you're not bugging them. You're doing it because they told you to call them back. So when you call back, you say, hey, you said call you back in a quarter. And they're thinking, yep, that's what I did. As opposed to telling them, hey, I'm going to call you back in a quarter. Now you're chasing. So if you do that, but let's say it does go cold, Here's what I would say. People get so twisted up on the words. Words are actually, when we communicate with other people, there's studies on this. 7% of what we say, or 7% of communication is words. 38% is tonality, and 55% is body language. Okay? If it's a phone call, it's 15% words, 85% tonality, what's in body language. Well, what affects all three of those? Your belief system. Okay? I am all about truth and honesty and transparency. And so if you're confused that someone didn't call you back, Brandt, for the guy who sent you this document and was all excited and said, here, sign this, and I want you to help me with my search, I'd be completely confused, and I would be very honest, and I wouldn't worry about your words, and I would say, hey, I'm NDA, I thought this was something you were really interested in. Did something change?
Right.
Did anything change on your end that makes this no longer a need or a service? Because if it has, that's completely okay. Just be honest with me, and I don't want to waste your time. Right. I would say something like that. And change. Has anything changed since we spoke last? Do you still need this? And if you don't, that's completely okay. Just let me know, and I don't want to bother you. I don't want to waste your time, because both our time is valuable. I would approach it with honesty, with my own words, and go there, and I think you're more likely to get a response, to get it re-engaged.
Yeah, great stuff. Good. We've got time for one or two other questions. So everyone who's in attendance, please put your questions in the box, and we'll use these last few minutes with George. One other question that came in before the webinar: what are the top 3 causes for sales teams to not close deals?
Yes. So I would start with belief system. Okay. If you guys are wondering what your limiting beliefs are, we have a sales assessment that we use, or an evaluation, to determine your specific limiting beliefs. I would try to identify what they are. Each individual can do that, and then you can put a plan in place to change limiting to an empowering belief. Other reasons people would not close more deals. The belief is one of the biggest ones. The second, the 2 biggest ways to grow sales. Number 1 is activity. Okay. All things being equal, if you knock on twice as many doors, if you pick up the phone twice as many times, you should sell twice as much. Right. So activity is critical. Make sure you know what a right size pipeline looks like. Right. So you look at what your close ratio is. If it's 50%, you need 2 qualified opportunities to close one. So you need twice as many deals as you'll close, and then go up the ladder and say, how many decision makers do you need to talk to in order to get a qualified opportunity? And you work backwards, and you figure out what your plan is. How many decision maker conversations do I need to have each week to work down your funnel? Another reason people don't close is they're not talking to decision makers.
Right.
And I cannot tell you a third reason they don't close. People make too many excuses. Stop blaming things you can't control, and take ownership of the things you can control, like your attitude, your beliefs, your activity, your sales effectiveness. Control those. Talk about those. Own those. Don't blame competition. Don't blame the pricing on your company. Don't blame your incompetent sales manager. Take ownership of it. Don't blame the economy. So people make excuses. They don't get to decision makers, and they make excuses why they can't. But that's another reason. They're not getting to the decision makers. They're talking to the wrong people. So those are all top reasons why people. Okay.
Got it, George. Terrific. Well, listen, we've got a couple of minutes. I know you've got an offer. We'll let you go ahead and share that with all the attendees.
Yeah. So here's, if you find this of value or interesting, what you see is what you get. Very transparent. I'd love to learn more about you. And if you have a challenge or an opportunity, for the first 5 folks, if you reach out to me, and I'm very happy to spend a 30-minute session, really just digging into kind of what's going on And if there's any way I can provide you some guidance or point you in the right direction, would be happy to do that. And here's my contact information here. Just call my office or shoot me an email. And
that's awesome, George. Well, thank you. And for all of you that are attending, and I know we've got a few people dropping off now as we hit the top of the hour, you will be receiving a recorded replay, as well as those that registered but did not attend. Please feel free to forward that along, and I'm sure George can stretch out to a few more people if we get a tremendous response. I told him before the webinar, I'm top of the list. So, but you said that wasn't going to make it 4, right? You've added me to it.
Yeah, I said we won't include you in that 5. And if it takes 31 minutes, that's completely okay. So cool. Well, I appreciate everybody that
well, thank you.
To the call.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, George, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. We've been very generous with your time. Jorge Chavez, founder and managing director and president, CEO of Topaz Sales Consulting. He's down in Texas, but he works nationally. And if you found this valuable, by all means, reach out to George. I'm sure he'd love to have another conversation. Thank you again for attending. Welcome back after our summer recess. We'll be having I think 2 webinars in October. We've got a tremendous number of presenters that wanted to get their message in before you begin planning your next calendar year. So stay tuned for the announcements on that. I think we've got one early in the month and one later in the month. And to please also check out the podcasts, Into the Corner Office, some wonderful stories there about middle market CEOs and their journey. Once again, George, thank you so much. And thank you all for attending.
All right. Thanks, Brandt. Okay.